Robert Hayes had imagined this day for years, walking into his only daughter's wedding, proud, emotional, ready to celebrate the life she was building. Instead, the moment he stepped through the gleaming doors of the Charleston Grand Ballroom, he was met not with joy, but with the icy voice of Claire Hayes, the little girl he had raised alone since her mother, Laura, passed away. "Dad, you're not invited. Please, go." She stood there in a $14,000 silk gown he had paid for. Her new husband, Brandon Lewis, at her side, his perfectly tailored tux and polished smile looking more like a wall than a welcome. Guests in designer suits and glittering gowns turned to watch. The air smelled of imported roses and champagne, but to Robert, it was the sour scent of betrayal. For nearly 3 decades, Robert had built Hayes Construction from the ground up. 60 employees, countless late nights, every dollar he could spare, poured into giving Claire the best. Private schools, a top university, luxury cars, an apartment in Atlanta, all so she could stand here, surrounded by Brandon's wealthy family, tell him he didn't belong. The sting of her words cut deeper than any business loss he had ever faced. Yet as he turned to leave, clutching the wedding gift he had chosen, himself, Robert's mind began to shift. This was no longer just about hurt feelings. It was about respect, boundaries, and a lesson his daughter had never learned. And before the night was over, her perfect wedding would unravel in a way no one in that ballroom could have imagined. Robert didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. Years in construction had taught him that you don't shout at a crumbling wall, you shore up the foundation, or you walk away before it collapses on you. And in that glittering Charleston ballroom, surrounded by people who measured worth in last names and stock portfolios, he knew his daughter had chosen her side. Stepped back into the cool spring air, the massive oak doors closing behind him with a thud that seemed to echo inside his chest. The parking lot stretched wide and empty except for his Ford F-150, parked alone in the farthest corner. Claire's new in-laws had probably asked the valet to tuck it out of sight, after all. A work truck didn't belong in the lineup of imported sedans and luxury SUVs glistening under the streetlights. As he walked, Robert's grip tightened around the small, wrapped box in his hand. Inside was a pair of antique silver candlesticks, Laura's favorite, passed down from her grandmother. He had planned to give them to Claire as a reminder that family history was worth more than any brand name. But now, looking at the package, he saw something different. Another gift for someone who no longer valued where she came from. Sliding into the driver's seat, he exhaled slowly, the smell of sawdust and leather filling the cab. Years of early mornings, payroll headaches, late-night bids, all to make sure his daughter never went without, replayed in his mind like a slow-moving film reel. And how had she repaid him? By shutting him out of the very day he had paid for down to the last detail. Robert started the engine. But instead of heading home, he pulled out his phone and scrolled past missed calls from his lawyer about an unrelated property dispute. His thumb stopped over a number he hadn't used in months. First National Bank, Business Services. The call connected on the second ring. "Patricia speaking, how may I help you?" "Patricia, this is Robert Hayes. Account ending in 6732. I need to stop several authorized transactions immediately." There was a pause. "I see a number of large payments processed today. Which ones specifically?" "All wedding-related charges," he said evenly. "Venue rental, catering, flowers, photography, music, everything." "Sir, these are substantial amounts. Are you certain? Completely?" His voice was steady now. The hurt had turned into something sharper, more deliberate. "There's been a change in circumstances." For the next 10 minutes, Robert rattled off authorization codes from memory, halting nearly 6 figures in payments before they could clear. Then he hung up and made a second call, this time to the catering company, Elegant Palette of Charleston. "This is Marcus," came the cheerful voice. "Marcus, this is Robert Hayes, father of the bride at the Lewis Hayes wedding tonight. I'm afraid your payment authorization has been revoked. You might want to secure your equipment and remaining food service before you lose more than you have to." There was stunned silence on the other end. "But the main course hasn't even gone out yet." "That's unfortunate," Robert replied, tone calm but final. You'll need to arrange alternate payment with the wedding party. Within 30 minutes, similar calls went out to the florist, the string quartet, the photographer, even the linen rental company. Each conversation ended the same way, polite but firm, with the kind of professional courtesy only a man who'd been in business for decades could deliver. By the time Robert finally set his phone down, the dashboard clock read for 15 p.m. through the windshield. He saw a white catering van pull into the venue's side entrance. Moments later, another truck appeared, the florist's. Robert leaned back in his seat, the hum of the idling engine filling the silence. Inside, Claire was likely still smiling for photos, shaking hands, laughing under chandeliers she thought were paid for. She had no idea the foundation beneath her perfect day had just been ripped out from under her, and Robert wasn't doing it for revenge. No, this was about something deeper. For years, he had allowed her to believe that love meant unlimited money, that sacrifice was just a father's duty, that respect was optional. Tonight, he was going to give her something far more valuable than a $14,000 dress or imported orchids. He was going to give her a lesson, one she would never forget. Robert didn't have to wait long. From the far corner of the parking lot, his Ford F-150 offered a perfect, discreet vantage point. Through the tall, arched windows of the Charleston Grand Ballroom, he could see the reception in full swing, glittering chandeliers, white orchids spilling over crystal vases, champagne flutes catching the light. The first crack in the facade came quietly. The double service doors near the catering kitchen swung open, and Marcus, the head caterer, stepped out with 3 of his staff. Their crisp white jackets looked oddly out of place against the grim expressions on their faces. Each carried large plastic bins instead of silver trays. Inside, Robert watched as they began covering the appetizer station with white linens, folding napkins over untouched plates of shrimp cocktail and mini crab cakes. Conversations faltered. Few guests exchanged puzzled looks. One of Brandon's aunts leaned toward another woman, whispering behind her champagne glass. But the real disruption arrived 5 minutes later. A white van, its side emblazoned with southern blooms. Charleston pulled up to the service. Entrance. Susan, the florist Robert had hired at Claire's request, stepped out with 2 assistants. They carried tall, empty containers, the kind used to transport expensive floral arrangements without damage. When they entered the ballroom, they didn't head for the back corners. They walked straight toward the altar display, the towering cascade of imported white orchids and roses that had been the backdrop for the ceremony only hours earlier. Claire spotted them immediately. Still radiant in her gown, she moved toward Susan with a smile that was all performance. "Hi there. We can handle anything you need after the reception. Just let me know." Susan's voice was calm but loud enough to carry. "Mrs. Lewis, I'm here to collect these arrangements. Payment authorization was canceled 45 minutes ago." The smile froze on Claire's face. "That's impossible. Everything was paid 4 weeks ago." The account holder, Robert Hayes, revoked all payments. "I have written authorization to reclaim our property." Robert could see the color drain from her face, even through the window. Guests had stopped talking altogether now, their attention fixed on the unfolding scene. Brandon cut across the dance floor, his polished shoes clicking sharply on the marble. "What's going on here?" His voice carried the kind of command that worked in a boardroom, but held no sway over someone like Susan, who'd spent decades running her own business. "Payment issues, sir? We're reclaiming our merchandise before it's damaged or discarded." "Is my wedding reception. We can, and our contract requires it when payment is revoked." As Susan's assistants began removing centerpieces from the tables, the tension in the room shifted from confusion to shock. A few guests took out their phones. Others sipped their drinks in awkward silence, pretending not to watch. Then Marcus returned with his team. They rolled out carts of untouched main courses, filet mignon, sea bass, roasted vegetables, straight back to the kitchen. The aroma of fine dining was replaced by the cold smell of linens being packed away. The string quartet stopped mid-piece when their own equipment manager arrived, disconnecting microphones and packing up music stands. Without warning, the ambient lighting dimmed as the sound technician shut down the system. The room, once warm with music and chatter, felt colder, smaller. Through it all, Robert remained in his truck, steady and silent. This was not about humiliating his daughter in front of her guests. It was about letting her watch the consequences of her choices unfold in real time. The direct result of dismissing the man who had made the entire event possible. Inside, Claire stood frozen at the center of the chaos. Her $14,000 gown, untouched by the mess, but powerless to stop it. Brandon's voice was sharp now, aimed at her rather than the vendors. Guests were slipping out the side doors, murmuring to each other as they left. The perfection she had curated for months, maybe years, was crumbling around her in less than an hour. And Robert knew. The night's lesson was only beginning. By the time Robert turned the key and eased the truck out of the parking lot, his phone was already buzzing. Claire Hayes. He let it ring. From the corner of his eye, he caught sight of the florist's van backing up, boxes of orchids loaded in the rear. Marcus's catering truck was already halfway down the street. The music inside the Charleston Grand Ballroom was gone now. No string quartet, no soft hum of conversation. Just the hollow image of a reception collapsing under its own weight. His phone rang again. Same name, same photo, Claire in her cap and gown at her college graduation. The last time she'd hugged him, without a request for money, he didn't answer. By the time he reached the bridge over the Ashley River, she'd tried 3 more times. It wasn't until the 7th call, nearly 20 minutes later, that Robert finally pressed the green button. Double quotes, "Hello, Claire." "Dad, finally. What have you done?" The caterers walked out. The music stopped. "This is my wedding day." Robert kept his voice calm. "No, Claire. This was your wedding day. Now it's something else. I didn't do anything except stop paying for things. Shh. You can't just—" She cut herself off, her voice breaking. "There. Are 60 people here asking why everything is falling apart? Brandon's family is furious. What do you expect me to tell them? That's your decision? But before you answer, let me give you a number. 950,000. There was silence on the other end. "That's how much I've spent on you since your mother passed," Robert continued. "Private school tuition. Northwestern University. Your first car, your second car, your third. Apartments in Atlanta and Savannah. Vacations. Designer clothes. And now, this wedding." "That," Claire stammered, "that can't be right. It's conservative. I have every receipt of every bank transfer documented." You never asked for the total before, because you never cared. You assumed it was endless. You assumed I was endless. "That's not fair. I've always been grateful." Robert almost laughed. "Grateful? Claire, when was the last time you said thank you without me writing a check? When was the last time you asked how I was doing before asking for money?" Her silence was answer enough. 3 hours ago," he went on. "You looked me in the eye and told me I didn't belong at your wedding, a wedding I paid for, down to the last imported flower. You embarrassed me in front of strangers because my work boots didn't fit in with your husband's country club crowd. And now you want me to rescue the party." "I didn't mean," she started, but he cut her off. "You meant every word. And here's the truth, Claire. I can't afford to keep teaching you that there are no consequences." There was a pause, and in the background Robert could hear Brandon's voice, tight with anger. "Tell him to fix it," he was saying. "Right now." Claire's voice was smaller now, almost pleading. "Dad, please. The cake's still here. Some guests haven't left. The photographer's waiting. If you just authorize the payments—" "No," Robert said simply. "Not this time. You've spent your entire adult life thinking my sacrifice was a given, that money would always appear because you asked for it. That stops today." Her breath caught. "Then what am I supposed to do?" "Figure it out, like an adult." "No. Like I did when I was your age. Without parents, without a safety net, without anyone bailing me out. Of mistakes." Robert could almost hear the moment the reality hit her, the soft exhale, the shaky breath.
Ow.
But he didn't soften his tone. "This isn't about revenge, Claire. This is about respect. And until you learn that respect is earned, not given. There's nothing more for us to discuss tonight." He ended the call before she could reply. The phone lit up again almost instantly. But Robert turned it face down on the seat beside him. The rest of the drive home was quiet. The hum of the tires steady against the asphalt. $950,000. 28 years of love, sacrifice, and provision. And in the end, all it had bought him was the opportunity to teach his daughter the one lesson she'd never forget. Robert didn't sleep much that night. The house was too quiet. The kind of silence that pressed in from all sides. A cup of coffee at 5:30 a.m., sat at his oak kitchen table, and stared at the manila folders stacked neatly in front of him. Each was labeled in his precise block lettering: education, transportation, housing, personal expenses, wedding costs. Every page inside those folders told a story. A canceled vacation so Claire's tuition could be paid on time. The down payment on her first apartment while he delayed replacing the roof on his own home. The 3 cars she'd driven into the ground, each replaced without question. Robert had always told himself it was worth it, that a good father gave his daughter the tools to build a life. But in Claire's hands, those tools had become luxuries, and luxuries had become entitlements. By 8:30, he was walking into the offices of Margaret Stevens and Associates, a law firm tucked inside one of Charleston's older brick buildings. Margaret herself greeted him, a woman in her late 60s with silver hair, sharp eyes, and a reputation for handling messy financial disputes with surgical precision. "Robert," she said, shaking his hand firmly, "I looked over the documents you sent last night. I've got to say I've never seen a personal record-keeping system this thorough." Robert sat down across from her in the polished mahogany conference room. "This isn't about embarrassment or making her miserable. This is about getting her to finally see what she's taken for granted in a way she can't ignore or spin into another story. Where she's the victim." Margaret nodded. "Understood. Based on the pattern of financial support, nearly $1 million over 28 years, we have grounds to classify this as a recoverable debt. We'll prepare a formal demand for repayment. It will be legal, binding, and unavoidable." "Good," Robert said. "I want it all in writing. Dates, amounts, categories, no room for denial." For the next hour, they went line by line through the records. Margaret's legal pad filled with notes, her pen scratching steadily as Robert outlined each major expense. Private school tuition, $126,000. Northwestern University, $284,000. Housing support, $125,000. Cars and insurance, $75,000. Personal expenses, $180,000. The wedding, $147,000. When they were finished, Margaret tapped the total at the bottom of the page, $937,000. "That's the figure," she said. "We'll give her 30 days to respond. If she ignores it, we move forward with civil recovery proceedings. She'll need legal representation, and that's not cheap, especially when she doesn't have the means to pay." By 11 a.m., the letter was ready. Heavy cream-colored paper, official letterhead. Every number supported by attached evidence. The language was formal but crystal clear. Repay $937,000, then 30 days or face legal action. Margaret slid the packet across the table. "We'll have it couriered to her hotel this afternoon. Signature required, so there's no claim she never saw it." Robert felt a mix of emotions as he stood to leave. Sadness for the necessity of it. Relief that it was finally happening. And somewhere under it all, a quiet satisfaction that, for once, Claire would have to face the kind of real-world consequence she'd been insulated from her entire life. By 2:15 p.m., Robert's phone buzzed with a text from the courier. "Delivery. Complete. Signed by Claire Hayes Lewis, room 827, Charleston Harbor Hotel." He could picture the scene, the hotel desk clerk calling up to their room, Brandon answering the door, assuming it was paperwork for the wedding vendors. The crack of the seal, the slow dawning on their faces as they realized it was a legal demand for almost $1 million. At 2:47, Claire's name flashed on his phone. He didn't answer. A voicemail followed, then another. By the fourth, her. The voice had shifted from disbelief to desperation. This can't be real. 900,000? You never said it was a loan? Michael's family's asking questions I can't answer. Please call me. Robert set the phone down without replying. The letter was real. The evidence was real. And for the first time in her life, his daughter was going to have to live in reality. By Monday morning, Robert thought the storm might go quiet. Claire had already burned through 4 voicemails of pleading, and he figured she was finally sitting with the weight of the legal letter. But entitlement doesn't dissolve overnight. It fights back. The first sign came not from Claire, but from his assistant, Janet. She stepped into his office holding a printed email. Her brow creased. Robert, this came in from the Charleston Business Chronicle. They're asking if recent family disputes are affecting Hayes Construction's operations. Robert read it twice. The language was polished, but the subtext was poison. Someone had been making calls, calculated, reputation-targeted calls. There's more, Janet said, holding up her tablet. The screen showed a Facebook post with over 300 shares. It was Claire and Brandon's official wedding photo. Claire in her gown, Brandon in his tux, both looking like a magazine spread. The caption, however, read like a courtroom accusation. On our wedding day, my father chose to humiliate me in front of everyone, canceling all payments without warning. Now he's demanding nearly $1 million as repayment. I've never experienced such cruelty from a parent. Please pray for us during this time. Hundreds of comments poured in shock, sympathy, and the kind of moral outrage social media thrives on. Several names Robert recognized from Charleston's business and charity circles had been tagged by. Noon, the phone calls began. A 20-year business partner wanted to hear Robert's side of the story. A Rotary Club board member expressed concern about rumors. Even the president of a local construction association hinted that perception can impact future bids. Robert didn't need a detective to trace the strategy. Brandon's family had deep roots in Charleston's upper-crust country clubs, historic preservation boards, charity galas. They knew the city's unspoken rule. Reputations are currency. Tarnish someone's, and you hit them where it hurts most. But Claire and Brandon had underestimated 2 things. First, Robert's network wasn't built on cocktail parties. It was built on decades of showing up, finishing projects on time, paying his crew, and honoring his word. Second, he had something neither of them could fake: documentation. That afternoon, Robert called Margaret Stevens. We're not staying quiet, he told her. If they want to make this public, then we go public with the truth. Every number, every receipt, every photo from the last 28 years. Margaret hesitated. Once we release it, there's no taking it back. Good, Robert said. It'll be permanent, like the reality Claire's been avoiding her entire life. The next 12 hours were pure strategy. Robert contacted the Chronicle directly, offering an exclusive look at the full financial record. He reached out to 3 other reporters who'd called earlier, promising transparency they couldn't ignore. Then he spent his evening phoning contractors, developers, business leaders, the people who mattered most to his livelihood, telling them exactly what would hit the news in the morning. By 9 a.m. Tuesday, the release went live. On his own company website and social media pages, under the headline, 25 Years of Support, the full record, Robert posted the spreadsheet summaries, scanned receipts and photographs, Claire's first day at private school, her college, graduation, the keys to her first apartment, which paired with the documented cost he had covered. The effect was immediate. Phone calls shifted from cautious to supportive. Robert, I had no idea, one business owner told him. He gave her more than most parents could in 3 lifetimes. Contractors he'd worked with for decades reposted the records with captions like, "This is what sacrifice looks like. Boundaries are long overdue." Even the Charleston Business Chronicle changed its tone, running a midday article titled, "When Parental Sacrifice Meets Entitlement. One Father's $937,000 Lesson's Facebook post still up. Now looked pitiful against the wave of hard evidence. The comments flipped. People who had defended her were now saying things like, "If this were my dad, I'd be thanking him every day, and you can't call it cruelty when it's accountability." By sunset, Robert knew the tide had turned. Claire and Brandon had chosen the wrong battlefield. In Charleston, image mattered, but truth, backed by decades of receipts, could sink a social smear faster than gossip ever could. And for the first time since the wedding, Robert allowed himself a small, quiet smile. This was no longer just about his daughter. It had become a cautionary tale for every parent who'd ever wondered if generosity without limits was a gift or a curse. By Wednesday morning, the storm had shifted direction, and it was no longer headed toward Robert. The first call came, not from Claire, but from someone she never expected to hear from this early. Brandon's father. Robert wasn't in the room, but he could imagine it. The phone ringing at the Charleston Harbor Hotel, Brandon rolling over in bed to answer. His father's deep-clipped voice on the other end. There would be no small talk, no polite preamble, just business. Brandon, the older man, would say, "We need to talk immediately." According to what Robert heard later, Brandon's father didn't mince words. 3 of his business partners had called within 24 hours, asking about the Anderson family's association with financial fraud. The country club was buzzing with whispers. And then there was the local paper's front page feature, the one showing Robert's neatly organized records for $937,000 of documented support. Passed around at the club like a bad stock report. Brandon's responses grew shorter, sharper. "I didn't know about the extent of the documentation. It's more complicated than we thought." "Yes, I understand the implications." Claire sat on the edge of the hotel bed, hair tangled, makeup from the night before smudged around her eyes. She was trying to read his expression, but the longer he listened, the less there was to read. When he finally hung up, the silence was heavier than any argument they'd had. "My family wants me home today," Brandon said flatly. Claire forced a laugh. "Home. Brandon, this is temporary. My dad will calm down. Stop." "Ain't." His tone was final, almost cold. "My father made it very clear. This has already damaged our family's reputation." 6 days of marriage, Claire. 6 days, and I've lost business contacts I've cultivated for years. Her stomach twisted. "This is ridiculous. It's a family matter. People will move on." Brandon pulled a suitcase from the closet. "People don't move on from this. Your father didn't just cancel a wedding. He published bank statements showing you've taken nearly $1 million without ever contributing a dime. Do you know what that looks like in my circle? At best, deception. At worst, manipulation." She reached for him. "Brandon, please, we can work through this." "What marriage?" he snapped, zipping the suitcase with a quick, angry motion. "You brought me into a financial disaster I didn't sign up for. Now my own lawyer is telling me to protect myself from any liability tied to you." The words hit harder than anything Robert had said. Liability. That's what she was now, not a partner, not a bride, but a financial hazard. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a text from Brandon's mother. "Emily, dear Michael. Needs to come home. Family obligations, you understand." The false sweetness in the message was almost worse than Brandon's bluntness. Claire's voice cracked. "You're leaving me? Just like that?" "I've been alone in this marriage since it started," Brandon said, softening only slightly. "All you've contributed is expectations and expenses. Maybe losing everything will teach you something. My family's money never could." The door clicked shut behind him, leaving the hotel room hollow and cold. Asterisk, for the first time since the wedding, Claire was truly alone. No husband, no family willing to intervene, no friends offering to help. Every credit card she had was maxed. The people she'd entertained with expensive dinners and lavish gifts weren't even answering her calls. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her phone. There was only one name left in her contacts who might answer, the same man she'd told to go away less than a week ago. Her thumb hovered over Robert Hayes' name for a long moment before she tapped it. The phone rang once, and a familiar voice answered, calm, even without an ounce of false comfort. "Hello, Claire." "Hello, Claire." The voice on the other end was unmistakable, steady, measured, and without the warmth she remembered. From her childhood, her throat tightened. "Dad, She stopped, unable to form the next words. The truth felt jagged in her mouth. Go on, Robert said, not unkindly, but with the calm authority of a man who had built both a business and a life on plain facts. I don't know where to start, she said at last. I've lost everything. Brandon's gone. He left this morning. His family cut me off completely. I don't even have enough to pay for this hotel room tonight, and everyone hates me. Robert let the silence stretch. Do you understand why? She closed her eyes, forcing herself to face it. For years she had blamed others for her problems, turning every mistake into someone else's fault. But this time, there was nowhere to hide. Yes, she whispered, because I treated you like a bank account instead of a father, because I never appreciated what you sacrificed for me, because I was selfish and entitled and cruel. There was a pause, the faint sound of Robert's breathing on the line. I saw the records you posted, she continued, her voice breaking. $937,000 over 25 years. I never asked where the money came from, never thanked you for what you gave up to provide for me. And then I stood in front of you, in the gown you paid for, and told you to leave my wedding? What else? Robert prompted. I lied about you on social media, got Brandon's family to spread rumors about you. I tried to destroy your reputation because I didn't want to face the truth. The words spilled out in a rush, like poison draining from a wound. I became the kind of spoiled adult people warn their kids not to turn into... Robert's voice softened, but it was still anchored in reality.
Out.
Do you remember when you were 8, after your mother died? You'd hug me every night and tell me I was the best dad in the world. I wanted to give you everything. But somewhere along the way, giving you everything made you stop loving me back, or at least stop showing it. I never stopped. Loving you, Dad? She swallowed hard. I stopped being grateful. I stopped being your daughter and became a consumer. What do you want from me now? The question terrified her because it wasn't about money. It was about whether they could have a relationship at all. I want to earn your respect again. I want to be the daughter you deserve. I want to learn how to live like an adult who gives instead of just takes. But right now, I need help surviving long enough to prove I can change. What kind of help? Enough for one more week in this hotel while I find a job. Any job. Robert didn't hesitate. If I help you this time, there will be conditions. You'll find employment within 2 weeks. I don't care if it's waiting tables or cleaning offices. Pride is a luxury you can't afford anymore. You will not ask me for money for 6 months. And we will talk once a week, as 2 adults. Not as a dependent child and a provider. Her answer was immediate. Yes, I want that. I want to earn it. I'll transfer $1,000 to your account. That covers the hotel for 1 week and basic groceries. After that, you're on your own. Thank you, Dad. I know I don't deserve this. You're right. You don't. But everyone deserves one chance to grow up, even at 28. The line was quiet for a moment. Then Robert added, I've always loved you, Claire. Now I want to see if I can respect you too. Won't let you down. Not again. We'll see. Love you, sweetheart. When the call ended, Claire sat on the edge of the bed, her phone still in her hand. For the first time in a week, the crushing weight in her chest loosened slightly. It wasn't relief, not yet. But it was something she hadn't felt in years, possibility, and, for the first time in her life, she knew she would have to earn it. The deposit hit her account by mid-afternoon. $1,000 exactly. No note. No emoji.
Oh, no.
No love, Dad. In the transaction description, just the cold, factual line from the bank, incoming transfer, Robert Hayes. Claire stared at the number longer than she cared to admit. It felt impossibly small compared to the life she'd been living, a life where $1,000 barely covered. A weekend getaway, let alone rent and groceries. But Robert's voice from that morning still echoed in her mind. That covers this hotel for 1 week in basic groceries. After that, you're on your own. For the first time in her 28, years on your own wasn't a romantic phrase. It was a deadline. She opened her laptop, pulled up a job search site, and typed the words she'd never typed before. Entry level. A flood of listings filled the screen. Receptionist, retail associate, hotel housekeeping, barista, warehouse, stocker. Every one of them paid less in a month than she used to spend in a week, without thinking. By 7 p.m., she had sent out 5 applications. No branding consultants, no event planning firms, no creative director titles with corner offices, just real jobs. The kind of work she'd once thought was for other people. The next morning, she walked to the grocery store 3 blocks from the hotel. No car now. The BMW X3 Robert had bought for her last year had been towed 2 days earlier when she missed a loan payment. In the produce aisle, she picked up apples, then put 2 back when she saw the total weight on the scale. At the checkout, she paid in cash, something she hadn't done in years. It felt strange, counting bills instead of swiping a card by. The third day, the reality of her situation began to sink in. She called a former college roommate, hoping for a couch to crash on if she couldn't keep the hotel room. The call went to voicemail. She tried to sorority sisters from Northwestern. One didn't pick up. The other politely said she was going through a lot right now and couldn't get involved. On Thursday, a retail store called for an interview. It was a chain clothing shop in a strip mall outside downtown Charleston. The manager was polite but blunt. It's $14 an hour, part-time to start. Weekends are mandatory, Claire nodded, smiling like she understood what that meant. In reality, she was calculating $14 an hour for 20 hours a week was $280 before taxes. It's barely enough for food, let alone rent. But it was something that night she called Robert as they'd agreed. I had an interview, she told him, trying to keep her voice steady. That's good, he said simply. You'll take it if they offer it? Yes, she hesitated. It's not much money. It's not about the money right now, Robert said. It's about showing up, doing the work, and proving to yourself you can carry your own. Wait, that's where respect comes from, and not just mine. She didn't know how to respond, so she just said, okay. By Saturday, the hotel week was nearly up. The retail store offered her the job part-time, starting Monday. Claire took it without hesitation. She also found a small furnished room above a retired widow's garage for $500 a month, no lease required. It was 10 miles from downtown and had no dishwasher, but it was a roof. Her first grocery trip after moving in was humbling. No gourmet cheeses, no imported coffee, no pre-cut fruit trays. Just bread, peanut butter, a bag of rice, eggs, and frozen vegetables. She carried the 2 bags herself, the plastic cutting into her fingers on the walk from the bus stop. That night, she sat on the twin bed in her tiny room, scrolling through old photos on her phone. Paris, Napa, Miami, the BMW's leather seats, brunches with champagne flutes raised high. And she realized that in all those pictures, she wasn't smiling like she was now. The smile tonight was small, but it was real, because for the first time in her life, she had earned the right to keep the lights on. 3 months passed before Robert truly believed that change was real. Claire hadn't missed a single weekly call. Some were short updates about work, paying rent, cooking her first pot roast without setting off the smoke alarm. Others were longer, where she'd ask about his day, his projects, even the fishing trips he used to take with her as a little girl. Not once did she ask for money. Her job at the retail store had grown into full-time hours. The manager trusted her enough to train new hires. She'd picked up weekend shifts at a small cafe nearby, where tips made the difference between just surviving and starting to save. In late spring, she invited Robert to lunch, her treat. It was a modest diner on the outskirts of town, nothing fancy. But the pride in her voice when she slid the check across the table was worth more than any luxury restaurant bill she'd ever signed. I wanted you to know, she said, I've saved $1,200. I'm keeping it in a separate account. Emergency fund. Robert smiled, the kind of smile that had been missing for years. That's more valuable than any gift you could buy me. There was a pause, then Claire added softly, I know I can't erase what I did at the wedding, but I'm trying to be the kind of daughter you can be proud of. You already are, he said. Not because you're perfect, but because you finally learned what it means to stand on your own. As they walked out to the parking lot, the air warm with the first signs of summer, Robert realized something I hadn't just gotten his daughter back. He'd helped her become someone new. No amount of money, gifts, or comfort can replace the dignity that comes from self-reliance. When you take ownership of your life, your work, your mistakes, your future, you don't just earn respect from others, you earn it from yourself. And that kind of respect can never be bought. If you've ever had to set hard boundaries with someone you love or had someone set them for you, I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments below so we can talk about it. And if this story hit you in the heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We share real life lessons every week, the kind that stay with you long after the video ends.